Welcome back to the conclusion of the matter. I'm joined by Ryan and Ren, and my name is Robbie, and we are the conclusion of the matter because Solomon writes in Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verses 13 and 14, "Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is man's all. For God will bring every work into judgment, including every secret thing, whether good or evil." We want to thank you for listening to this podcast and perhaps several of our other ones. If you have questions or ideas, perhaps. Well, it could be their first one. Like
it could be, yeah.
So if it is your first one, welcome. And if it is not your first one, then welcome back. But anyway, if you have questions or topic ideas that you would like for us to look at, you can email those to us at the conclusion of the matter at yahoo.com, or you can send us a text or see us in person or any other way, really. And we did find out after further research from last week's podcast that there is technically no current tense of the word philosophy. So there is, I guess, a verb that says to philosophize, but that was all we came upon by a quick Google search. So anyway, that's why we were so confused at the end, because we were looking for a word that didn't exist. So sometimes in those situations, I make up my own.
Well, that's all you can do.
I honestly thought like the tense of the word I used to begin with was an original word, but I'm not sure if that one is either. So when I say that sometimes like I like to philosophize, then technically that's not a word, but it kind of seems like it should be. But anyway, we're not going to be talking about that topic, except in the sense that we are going to do some philosophing, which is a word I learned.
I thought you said in that Google search, philosophize was
philosophize is not a word technically, but
I thought you said that was the verb.
That's technically here. I'll Google.
If it's
it
the
again.
verb, then it's a word.
That's just what it said on Google. So maybe we'll have to get like an English professor or something to further clarify the tense of the word.
Jason, let us know.
There we go. Yeah. So if he's listening, maybe he can let us know. But apparently, philosophing is a word because I guess it's like the current or past. I don't know. Maybe we'll have to ask him about this whole thing.
Yeah, maybe
we're going to have to philosophize about the word philosophize.
We're going to have to call in hazmat because we have derailed.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
But I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to you.
Hey, thanks,
now.
Robbie. We're going to do our contradicting contradictions.
That was actually a perfect segue. Because he said that philosophizing
That
was
is a
not
good
a word,
point,
and then
yeah.
the Google search said that it
Yeah,
was. That's a
true.
contradiction.
Yep.
It's one or the other.
Yeah. Well, that's
It is a
Google.
Good job,
contradiction.
Robbie.
It's Google.
Good job.
So it's
I
not.
tend to like to segue things in there.
Anyway, getting back to contradicting
Can
contradictions.
philosophize about
Are these
These were
viewer requested?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I assumed. But we're going to look at 3 today. The first one is, so really, I'll just start with the first one. Who killed King Saul? So what I would say is that when we deal, and I think we've probably said this before, when we deal with contradictions, we have to look at the time, the place, the person, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Simple one is Noah built an ark and the Israelites built an ark.
Right.
2 different arks, so there's no contradiction there. They're only
Yeah.
spelled the same.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have
I
something
was
else
just wanting to hit on that because that was something that I picked up from one of Eric Lyon's books on contradictions that has helped me a lot ever since I read it.
Is that one of the brass ring ones?
Yeah, when the
One is-
anvil rings.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Oh, yeah. Not brass ring,
it's
anvil.
in order for something to be a contradiction, you have to be talking about the same thing, person, whatever, at the same time and in the same sense in order for it to be a contradiction. So you can say, I don't know, maybe the sky is blue, and then you maybe you hear another phrase, and the sky looks really gray.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's not necessarily a contradiction because it could be the clouds that are gray. It's about to rain, so it looks gray.
Overcast, yeah.
So you're not really talking about the same thing, though you might be using the same terminology. And the other thing that I picked up from his book that I thought was very helpful was that any reasonable possible explanation
I was going to say that too.
suffices. You don't have to have a definitive answer all of the time, but if there is a possible explanation, then you cannot classify it as a contradiction.
It also has to explicitly say the opposite, or say
Yeah.
like that something happened and that something did not happen.
It cannot both be and not be at the same time.
Kind of like philosophize being a word
Yes.
or not being a
It
word.
either is or it isn't.
So we'll start.
Or it will be.
He didn't
and
take the bait.
if you're following along with us, go ahead and turn to 1 Samuel chapter 31. The verse that is called out is verse 4, but I'm going to read 1 through 6, I guess. Now the Philistines fought against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines and fell down slain in Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines followed hard upon Saul and upon his sons, and the Philistines slew Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchi-Shua and the sons of Saul. And the battle went sore against Saul, and the archers overtook him, and he was greatly distressed by reason of the archers. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, Draw thy sword and thrust me through therewith, lest these uncircumcised come and thrust me through and abuse me. But his armor-bearer would not, for he was sore afraid. Therefore Saul took his sword and fell upon it. And when the armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, likewise he fell upon his sword and died with him. So Saul died, and his 3 sons, and his armor-bearer, and all his men that same day together. Everybody's staring at me, so I'm not. Anyway, in this verse 4, how did Saul die? I mean, he fell on his sword,
Fell on
right?
his sword.
So then we're going to jump to...
Well, I think it's, before we go on, I
go
think
ahead.
it's important that verse 3 says the battle became fierce against Saul, and the archers hit him and severely wounded him.
Yes.
So,
I'm sure we'll,
Yeah,
probably
that's
circle
fair.
back to that.
2 Samuel chapter, let's see, 2 Samuel chapter 1, sorry, and looking at verse 10. And this is, let me jump back here a little bit.
I was just going to say it's the Amalekite.
Yeah, I was going
Man.
to figure out where I wanted to start here. I'll start in verse 5. This young man comes up, and if we look back at, behold, a man came out of the camp in verse 2 with the clothes rent and earth upon his head, and came forth. David fell to the earth and did. I'm in the wrong, man. I don't even know what that word means. Sorry, let me change versions. Paid homage. And David said to him, Where do you come from? And he said, I have escaped. Let's see. How do you know that Saul in verse 5, how do you know that Saul and his son Jonathan are dead? And the young man said, By chance I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on his spear, and behold, the chariots and the horsemen were close upon him. And when he looked behind him, he saw me and called to me, and I answered, Here I am. And he said, Who are you? I answered, I am an Amalekite. And he said, Stand beside me and kill me, for anguish has seized me, and yet my life still lingers. So I stood beside him and killed him, because I was sure that he could not live after he had fallen. And I took the crown that was on his head and the amulet that was on his arm, and I have brought them here to my Lord. So here we have an Amalekite young man that said, Hey, I just happened to be there by chance, and he called me over there and asked me to, put him out of his misery, for lack of a better term. And he said that he did. Okay, so we've got another version. Version being okay, not contradiction. Haven't said that yet. And then anything on that one, guys, you wanted to point out real quick? All right, and the other one is 2 Samuel chapter 21 and verse 12. 2 Samuel 21 verse 12. David went and took the bones of Saul and the bones of his son Jonathan from the men of Jabesh Gilead, who had stolen them from the public square of Beth-shan, where the Philistines had hanged them on the day that the Philistines killed Saul on Gilboa. So now, and I think this alludes to where you were at, Robbie, where now we're saying, wait, the Philistines killed Saul. So was it Saul killed Saul, the Amalekite killed Saul, or the Philistines killed Saul?
Well, he fell on his sword. I think we've got 2 out of 3 that say that in a sense. But I would say, like, particularly where we're at here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I brought up verse 3 earlier
For a reason, yeah.
because it clearly, I think it's an implication that Saul
Was
would've-
mortally
yes.
wounded.
would have
Yeah.
been mortally wounded, and either they would have tortured him to death or they would have killed them themselves. So regardless, in that period of time after he, commits suicide to the time they catch up to him or whatnot, he's dead. And so I think the Philistines pretty much took credit that because they pretty much, defeated him
Well,
in the battle,
well,
and here they go.
The way that I look at it too is they had wounded him so badly that even if he had done nothing, he would have died
probably died.
anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So in that sense, they were ultimately responsible for his death.
I think that one's
But
a semantic.
He, kind of like a point of pride, did not want to die because of the Philistines, so he
Yes.
kills himself.
So they
Yeah.
couldn't take credit.
Yeah, so basically, so they couldn't take
What
credit.
you guys were just talking about there is what I, always think about with in Acts chapter 2, Peter claims that those people are the ones that crucified
yeah,
Jesus. They weren't the ones that really
Yeah.
did it.
They
they
didn't nail him to the
they
cross. Yeah.
caused it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to your point, they're
that's
the
a good
ones
point.
that started it, but the Romans are really the ones who
Right.
crucified him. So I think I don't think we're saying here anything specifically wrong,
Yeah.
or this is not in chapter 21. It's, oh no, the Philistines killed him. Oh no, Saul killed himself. I think they did kill him. They started the
Yeah.
process. He chose to end it sooner than probably natural would have happened with the wounds that he got. But
Yep.
I think even, I don't mean to bring up a gruesome example, but like during World War II, we dropped the atomic bombs on Japan. Somebody,
Mm-hmm.
it would be true for us to say that that the U.S. government killed the citizens of Japan in those places, but it would also be true that they were killed by an atomic bomb.
Yeah.
So both of them are true.
Or even a more recent example, 9/11, when those planes crashed and a lot of people jumped out of windows because they saw the inevitable. They knew what was going to happen. And so in that sense, you could say that they killed themselves, but you could also say that they still died because of the
9/11,
planes
yeah.
crashing into the towers.
it's fair.
Good analogy.
And as far as the Amalekite, my answer would be, is it possible he just lied?
Yeah, made it up.
Yeah, because, and this was something I read, I think it was actually an article on Apologetics Press. It's possible that this guy knew that Saul and David were enemies, more so Saul with David than David with Saul. And he's trying to gain favor with David, saying that, hey, I've killed your enemy, But, I mean,
It backfires.
Yes, it backfires. But it's very possible that he lied. And I think this is an important distinction because the record that we have in Scripture is inspired, but not every event that's recorded is inspired. And I think, there's records of lies recorded. I mean, Abraham lied to Pharaoh, and blanking on the other, was it No, not Abimelech. I don't. One of the other kings that he lied to him about Sarah, or like when Pharaoh in Exodus chapter 5, where he says, "Who is this God that I should hear?" He wasn't inspired to say that,
Right.
but Moses was inspired when he was recording it. And so we have to recognize that distinction, that just because an event is recorded in Scripture does not mean that the event itself was inspired.
Or
He's
true.
just or true.
true.
He's just recording, hey, this is what happened. This is what this guy said. But
Also,
that doesn't make it true.
why does he not mention any other context except about Saul? He doesn't mention like the armor bearer, doesn't mention about like Jonathan and his sons dying, doesn't mention anything much
also-
about like the arrows.
And
that
I was
hit him.
reading from the ASV when I did that, and he mentioned a spear, which was not in the first account. So he could be making it up and not even having. Did it say sword in another version?
I think it said spear.
Okay.
I thought.
So it's
I noticed that too. I think New King James has a difference in the two accounts.
So
there for
what
that
I was
way,
wondering
too.
is maybe he is making it up, and he doesn't even know the weapon that was used. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So all to your point is Moses. This is being written, not Moses. 2 Samuel is recording a quote, and to your point, maybe he is making it up.
Yeah.
But that kind of, I was going to bring up the next, so back to 2 Samuel chapter 1. If you look at the end of the Amalekites account here, after, he gives this whole spiel and David kind of responds to it in verse 14. So David said to him, "How is it that you were not afraid to put forth your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed?" Then David called one of the young men and said, "Go near and execute him." and he struck him so that he died. So David said to him, your blood is on your head, for your own mouth has testified against you, saying, I have killed the Lord's anointed. So, I guess you could kind of take two interpretations, either, that they're killing him for killing Saul, or they're killing him for basically making a false claim here. I guess you can make a judgment on that. But, I just think especially your own mouth has testified against you. It seems because maybe we don't know the tone, just reading like anything else. If you're reading text, it's kind of hard to tell the tone, because David even asked him in verse 13, where are you from? How is it, in verse 14, how is it that you were not afraid to put forth your hand to destroy the Lord's anointed? And then even some of the questions he asked in the beginning of the chapter there, we don't really know what kind of tone. Like David might be kind of being a little bit like, maybe not sarcastic, but he may already know this guy's, maybe not the most honest source. Okay. But maybe he is telling the truth, and maybe he, it's also possible that he's just not remembering correctly.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think what we've seemed to kind of have had a consensus about here, that, he was being pursued by the Philistines. An arrow mortally wounded him, and he would have died from that more than likely. So to escape being killed by the Philistines, he committed suicide and fell on his sword, and so did his armor bearer. But there's not really a lot of, other details other than that the Amalekite allegedly kills Saul.
Yeah.
Nothing about the armor bearer, nothing about anything really else there. It just kind of seems like a random, that's convenient. So,
well, and that goes back to what we were just talking about. Any reasonable, possible explanation is sufficient. Is it possible that he's making this up? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is it possible there's some details that we just don't have? Sure.
Usually the case.
But it's not enough to constitute a legitimate contradiction.
Agreed. Yep. Okay, so the next one is who wrote on the second pair of tablets, and what we're talking about here is the writing of the 10 Commandments. Basically, the first set were broken, so then there's a second set that is written, starting in Exodus 34, verses 27 and 28. It is recorded there, and the Lord said to Moses, write these words, for in accordance with these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel. So he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He neither ate bread nor drank water, and he wrote on the tablets the word of the covenant, the 10 Commandments. And then we jump to the other verse in question in Deuteronomy 10, verses 1 through 4. And this is Moses recounting here on the new tablets. He said, at that time the Lord said to me, cut for yourself 2 tablets of stone like the first, and come up to me on the mountain and make an ark of wood. And I will write on the tablets the words that were on the first tablets that you broke, and you shall put them in the ark. So I made an ark of acacia wood, or acacia, I don't know how you pronounce that, but it doesn't really matter, and cut 2 tablets of stone like the first, and went up to the mountain with the 2 tablets in my hand. And he wrote on the tablets in the same writing as before the 10 commandments that the Lord has spoken to you on the mountain of the midst of the fire on the day of the assembly. And the Lord gave them to me. So there we have two accounts of the writing of the second stones. One account in Exodus, God told Moses, write these down. The Deuteronomy account, it appears to say that God wrote it. What do you guys think?
Well, I thought it was interesting. I'm not sure if I had this passage if it was included in the question itself, or if it's one that I noticed as I was studying this. But if you go back to the beginning of Exodus 34, I know you read the beginning of Deuteronomy 10, but at the beginning of both of those chapters, God says in both of those contexts that he would write on them. So in both contexts, it's God is saying, I will write on them. But then you get down to what?
27.
Yeah, 27, and it said that Moses writes on them. And then again, in Deuteronomy 10 and verse 4, it said that God wrote on them. And so you do have, again, seemingly a contradiction. But I guess in my study of this, my answer would be that we need to differentiate there in verse 27, where God says to Moses, "Write these words, for in accordance with these words I have made a covenant with you and with Israel." That goes back to verse 10 of Exodus 34, where the covenant is renewed. And he goes through, now some of these things are very similar to the Ten Commandments, but some of them are not a part of the Ten Commandments, like the Feast of the Unleavened Bread and the various feasts that they have recorded. Now, some things may be like the gods there in verse 17 or the Sabbath there in verse 21. There is some overlap, but these verses 10 through 26 is really some of the core teachings of the law of Moses. And it seems to me that what's happening here is God wrote down the 10 Commandments, but then Moses recorded these other things about the covenant on the tablets.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I brought up this verse last time, but 2 Peter 1:21, for prophecy never had its origin in human will, but prophets, though human, spoke from God as they were carried along by the Holy Spirit. So it's, to me, kind of God working through that person. But I agree with kind of what you brought up there too.
That's kind of where I'm at too, because Paul's given credit for writing
the New Testament,
all of 13 epistles, and then in one place I am writing with my own hands, which tells me some of his epistles he just dictated. Now, also the thing I would point out in Exodus, there's a miraculous thing happening here. Moses went without food and water for 40 days. Without miraculous intervention, that's not humanly possible. Same with Jesus, 40 days without food and water. There had to be miraculous going on, at least water. I know people can go without food, but you got to have something as a human being. So there's something miraculous happening up there. Whether God took Moses' hand and did it physically or he dictated it to him, to me, I don't think it matters personally, but maybe God wrote one, Moses wrote two. Maybe God wrote. I don't know. We don't know that.
All right, your turn.
But again, that goes back to what we were just mentioning. All of those are possible explanations that are reasonable, that do not do injustice to the text or to reason or logic, and therefore any one of them is sufficient. There's another thing which this was brought up in one of the articles that I read in preparation for this. If you think about like Exodus 34, at the beginning of the chapter, Moses, who recorded this, said, God said he's going to write these things. And then at the end, not even the end of this same chapter, in verses 27 and 28, now Moses is saying God told him to write these things. Do we really think that someone would be so dumb so as to contradict themselves 20 verses later? Like that obviously contradict themselves 20 verses later. I think it's a bit of a stretch, and I think that's true of the next one that we're going to look at as well. But I think we need to give people a little bit more credit, but also understanding the fact that a lot of people are very quick to say that something is a contradiction without really scrutinizing it and just doing a very surface reading of what it says.
I agree. Robbie, anything on that one?
That's pretty much all I had to say about it.
Okay. The next one is in reference to when Joseph was sold by his brothers. We see a, air quote, contradiction of who actually sold him. In Genesis 37 and verse 27, Judah, the brother of Joseph, said, "Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. So Judah says, hey, let's sell them to the Ishmaelites, all right? verse 28, we see the Midianite traders introduced, and then in verse 36. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold him, referring to Joseph, in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. So we have those two references, and then we jump to Genesis chapter 39 and the first verse. Now Joseph had been brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard, an Egyptian, had bought him from the Ishmaelites who had brought him down there. So we have the Ishmaelites mentioned, we have Midianite traders, and the Midianites mentioned as well. What gives, guys?
Well, again, what I said a moment ago, do we really think that whoever recorded this is so incompetent so as to contradict themselves? What is it, like 10 words later?
Yeah.
If that.
The next verse immediately.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
They're words that they're used interchangeably as far as I can tell. There are different peoples, but the Midianites were nomadic and they would travel around, so it's very likely that they had kind of intermingled with the Ishmaelites, and they are called one and the same. Another example of this is in Judges with Gideon, because in verse 22, the men of Israel said to Gideon, "Rule over us, you and your son and your grandson also, for you have saved us from the hand of Midian." And then in verse 24, Gideon said to them, "Let me make a request of you. Every one of you give me the earrings from his spoil," for they had golden earrings because they were Ishmaelites. So again, Midianites, Ishmaelites being used interchangeably.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of, the whole Potter's Field, Field of Blood,
Yeah.
talking about the same place. Even like a few like historical examples, the city of Constantinople is now Istanbul. It was also Byzantium for a little while. So different places can be different things. Even like, let's take our state, for example, like somebody that lives in Chicago, they're from Chicago, right?
Yeah.
But are they also from Illinois?
Yes.
Are they also from America? Also, yes. So all those things. I even
Also, yes. In case you guys didn't know.
even during the Civil War, you had one of the first. Well, really, there were two battles here, but one of the first battles was the Battle of Bull Run. The North went by one name, the South went by another, and called it Manassas because one went by the closest city, one went by the closest like river or landmark. So here's a couple maps that I got. So here's kind of like generally where, I don't know if anybody watching can actually see this, but
if you can,
so
you've got some fantastic
Midian-
eyes.
Can't you add this though, like you did those
I
charts?
could if you, is it images that you have?
yeah,
or is
I'll
it-
send it to
okay.
you. So you can look at it now or later. But anyway, so the Midianites are on this map here. And basically what you'll see if you'll look at both of these maps is they're looking pretty much in the same place. So there's Midian, and then here is the Ishmaelites' territory, which would have overlapped with where the Midianites lived. So kind of like to your point, since they were nomadic, they kind of moved around, but like the Ishmaelites, descendants, if you want to call it that, or the Ishmaelites' kingdom, covered a whole lot more territory than that.
Yeah.
So, but it was more or less, kind of like the Midianites would have been like Chicago, and the Ishmaelites' territory would have been, if you said like Illinois or America, for example. But all of them are equally true. It's just kind of like a semantic thing.
Yeah.
Even let's even bring in a modern debate. Okay, Missouri. Some people consider Missouri part of the North. Some people consider it part of the South.
It's part of the
Some
North.
people call it the Midwest. So,
Well, I guess Midwest would be more accurate.
so. But
if-
it kind of like just depends on, really just like perception more than anything else.
My general rule of thumb is if you're above the Mason-Dixon line, then
It's
if
north.
you're arguing north or south, then it's north.
So they there's been a lot of debate today about it. So even what we were talking about during lunch about pecan and pecan pie.
Yes.
So
Pecan.
Interesting.
Pecan.
pecan. Ryan, anything you would like to add? Since you're
I've always called it pecan, so I don't know if that means
Yeah.
anything, but
It
There-
means you're right. That's what it means.
he's from the north, according to you.
He is, but can even a broken clock's right twice a day.
Yeah, but you grew up in the
I
south.
thought you said I
and-
was right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I'm
But
saying
you
even
call-
though you're from the north, you can still be right about some things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And your broken clock.
Yeah, it's like, wow.
Is that a
Zinger.
compliment or an insult?
Interesting.
That's a compliment.
That's your-
It's a backhanded
That's your
compliment.
opinion, mister. So I think we've pretty much answered
Yeah.
those three. Again, if anyone brings you contradiction, the Ren mentioned a book. There's three
Yeah, I think he's got
volumes
three
of it.
volumes
I have
Yeah.
for some reason I think brass rings all the time, but you're right. It's the anvil rings,
Yeah.
not brass.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm throwing brass rings in there, but there's a lot. He covers a lot of those, like several. There's numerical differences in certain between Chronicles
I
and
think
Kings,
we've
and
covered some of those. In
like the number of
previous
chariots
ones.
is that's the one I think of all the time. The number of chariots or horsemen or
Yeah.
something like that. There's just all kinds of people always try to say,
Yeah.
well, see, this is why. Anyway, I think to Ren's point, if there's a plausible explanation, okay. And also what we started out with is make sure we're talking about the same person, the same place, the same
Same time.
time,
In
the same
sense,
event.
Yeah.
And even if you are, it doesn't mean it's a contradiction. You can take the gospel account, Luke is the only one that mentions the second criminal on the cross
Oh yeah.
that apparently changes his tune.
Mm-hmm.
And the rest of them, the other gospel doesn't. Are they contradicting? No,
No.
they're just complementing. It's like if all three of us we witnessed something out here, we would all see different aspects of it and probably
Yeah.
report different parts of it.
Well, it's also in that case, the intended audience makes a big difference
Yeah.
too. It determines what type of information they record and how, but it doesn't constitute a contradiction.
Correct. Yeah.
Matthew is writing to Jews, so he has a ton of Old Testament references. Mark is writing to Romans, so he focuses a lot on the miracles of Christ and Christ's power and all of those things. And so there's a lot of variables that have to be taken into consideration before you can say something's a contradiction.
Agreed. So, as for contradicting contradictions, I think we have reached the conclusion of the matter.